Hi, I'm Chuck Dorsett for Weaver Leather Supply. Let's make a pair of double wrap mystery braid bootstraps. In fact, I love bootstraps. I have some on almost every pair of boots I own. They can really dress up a pair of boots, but also so many places these will work. Western, biker, fashion, in so many ways we can make these our own. All right, so anything I use in this video, weaverleathersupply.com, or check below. We've got links going to take you straight to the website. Also, if you want to know when our videos release, just click your notifications. You'll know exactly when these come out. So let's start off with our pattern. We've got a very simple pattern here. We've got digital picks. We'll look at that shortly, but we're going to talk about what we're doing first off. It's going to help everything fall right into place. So the first step, we need a measurement on our boot. So let's take a tape measure. And if we don't have a tape, we can simply use some lace. Let's wrap this around our boot twice, seam to seam. That's going to give us the measurement. Now, we don't want this too tight. We don't want this to impede our foot going into the boot. But at the same time, we're going to have our hardware on the outside. That's going to look good. But also, that's going to add a little weight. So that's going to droop a little bit. That looks very cool. So what we'll do, let's get that measurement. Then we're going to drop 4 inches from that measurement. Basically, that's our 2 billet pieces. So by dropping that 4 inches, that's going to put us in the second hole. That's where we want to be. But also, that'll keep a loose fit. So with that, in fact, right there, we're going to use our bezels. These look good. But also, again, our hardware is going to be situated on the outside of the boot. We'll be able to see it. We're only going to have braid on the inside of the boot, so nothing's going to be clicking or rubbing together. All right, so right here we've got our braided piece. My boot is about 32 inches, so I'm dropping 4 inches. That's 28. Now we'll have our tongue side and our buckle side, all 3/4 of an inch, and we've got our small keeper. Right here on our braids, we're just coming in at 1 inch from either end, and we'll braid that. All right, we've got a feel for what we're doing. Let's look at our digital picks. So 3/4 of an inch wide on our strapping. We've got our main braided strap. We've got our tongue side, 3/4 inch by 4.5. And then our buckle side, 3/4 inch by 4 inches, and then down to our lowly keeper, 3/8 of an inch by 2 3/4 inch. And we're going to cut 2 on everything, 1 for our right foot, 1 for our left. All right, we've got a feel for what we're doing. Let's step over to our main table. We're going to talk about the leather we're using, then we're going to cut some leather. Our first step here, we're going to go down the rabbit hole, but I'm going to do my best to rein that in, but you'll see where I'm going with this. At Weaver, we've got so many great options. Right here, we're going to make our bootstraps with our Crazy Horse Brown, 4 to 5 ounce. Great buy for us crafters. We'll talk about that. But how about this? We go with this for our braid, and we go with our Pioneer Chrome for our billets, or maybe our Chrome for our braid and our Croc for our billets. If we want to go with a more feminine look, the Cypress is one of my favorite leathers. The Fuchsia just pops. Love the turquoise, gorgeous brown. Or maybe we want to go more fashion, Western Crunch. We've actually got 9 colors in that, and they are gorgeous. Whew. Okay, but let's back up. All kinds of ways we can make this our own, but we're going to make our bootstraps with our Crazy Horse. So let's reset here and do that. I'm going to do my best not to roll on the sales pitch here, but this is a great leather for us crafters to have in our shop. Makes great cuffs, wristbands, purse, bag, pouch, headbands, gussets, and in fact it makes great lace. But the biggest point, very affordable. Now on this, we've got this in 3 weights, 2 to 3, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, and 2 colors. We've got the Crazy Horse Brown, then we've got the Crazy Horse Black. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut our long braided pieces, 28 inches. But here's a big point. We're going to use a leather lace cutter. You'll see how easy this makes this. But if we don't have that, we're going to have to put 2 parallel slits, long slits in this to braid. So, if we don't have the cutter, what we need to do, let's mark this out. For me, 28 inches. So I'll mark my ends. I'm going to mark my holes, 1/2 inch in on each. Then right here, I'm going to come in a 1/2 inch from that. That's where our slits will start and stop. Where I'm going with this is that let's cut those slits before we separate the strap out from the main body. It's going to make it very easy. But again, we'll use our lace cutter. So right here, first off, I'm going to cut 2 at 28 inches by 3/4 inch. Now, new blade or sharp blade every time when we're dealing with softer or lighter weight leathers. So I'm going to overcut this just a little bit, then we'll trim the size. Good, there we go. Now let's watch our overcut there, because now we're working into whatever the next project is going to be. All right, we've got those two. There we are. All right, now I'm going to cut 2 each of our smaller billets. And cut to size on both of those. Okay, last up, and I always forget the keepers. Great opportunity to burn up some scrap. So on these, we're going to back these down to 3/8 of an inch wide, 2 3/4 inch long. So let's cut 2 of those from our scrap. Okay, everything's cut. Let's reset, mark for our holes. Here's a point I should have brought up when we were talking about our pattern, but in all honesty, here, not going to be that big of an issue. But what I'm talking about is this. When we braid anything at all, it's going to shorten it. Good example. We're going to do a mystery braid with an 8 to 9 ounce. We're going to lose 1, maybe 1.5 inches per foot. Well, when we step down to softer, thinner leathers, or leathers that have a little bit of stretch to them, well, first off on this, we're probably only going to lose about 1/2 inch per foot. But because this is thinner, maybe a little bit more stretchy, we can stretch that back out almost 3/4 inch. So again here, not that big a deal. But heavier leathers, we do need to account for that. Now on our pattern here for our 2 longer straps, love the pattern sheeting. Makes a great pattern. Easy to mark, easy to cut, but it's durable. Now I've got 2 different color marks here. Typically, if I'm going to punch a hole, I'm going to mark black. But if I only want to mark that hole, I'm going to go with red. Keeps me from making mistakes. So what we'll do is I'm going to butt this to one end. Let's make our 3 marks, same. And then let's just flip this for the other end. And that piece is marked. Okay, going to do the same thing to our billets. And there we are. We don't necessarily need to mark our little keepers. All right, let's step over to one of the best tools we sell. This is a great revolving punch. Very solid, sturdy tool. Replaceable tubes. Now we're going to be using a small double cap rivet and a smaller buckle. So I'm going to come up to about our 2nd, maybe our 3rd tube. Now when we're punching thinner leathers, they can be a little difficult, a little frustrating. Let's just put some scrap behind that. Yeah, how easy is that? And we get a very clean hole. Good, we've got that. And I have to remind myself, let's don't punch those marks. Over on our keepers, like I said, we don't really need a pattern here. We just need a hole in both ends. We've got that. Okay, let's go cut our slits. This is our leather lace cutter. In my opinion, this is one of the tools that's an absolute must in our shop. Well, primary job here, cutting lace. So I don't know if we can see it, but our blades can sit down in between each of these plates. Those are 1/8 of an inch. Great example. I get a piece of leather in my shop, let's say a side of leather, it's going to make good lace. So I'm going to take off 1 inch across that spine. That piece, 1 inch by 8 feet, we pull that through here. Now we've got 64 feet of lace. We're not going to miss an inch, but at the same time, now we've got a nice straight edge on that side to work from. But the one place I use this the most, we're going to cut a mystery braid. So right here, this is 3/4 inch. The reason behind that is that now we have 3 bands at 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to pull this through. What I'll do is I'm going to pull it and it's going to seat down on to those blades. Good. We're going to do that right where our mark is. Now, I'm just going to pull that through. I'm going to keep some tension on this end. Good. And now let's bring that right up to our end marks. Yeah, there we go. How easy and consistent is that? I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And again, a must-have for our shop. Okay, let's braid these. We've got a number of videos on how to do a mystery braid, but let's just do a crash course here. This is basically just a 3-strand braid, but because we've got a closed end on this, we need to count. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about, but also a little easier to see how this is done on a shorter strap as opposed to the longer. So, standard 3-strand braid. I'm going to go up. I can go over or under. I'm going to go under my right. Now that becomes the center. I'm going to take my left under. That's the center. Right under, left under. There's our 3-strand braid, okay? But on a mystery braid, we need to count our turns. So I'm going to go under. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4, okay? Now when I open this up, notice we've got a left strand, a center strand, and a right strand. I'm going to take the tab. I'm going to come up on the right side, over, and down on the left side. Okay, we still got a little bit of a mess. That's okay. We did 4 turns. Now let's do number 5, number 6, and now that just flips through. Okay, so we've got 1 set. But notice, I'm trying to get this really tight, because what we'll do, that gives us room down here to get our last turn in, but then we'll flip this around and we'll make it more consistent. So I'm going to work my way down. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, there's my center. Let's take that tab around. Number 5, number 6, and that just flips through. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's that center. And 5 and 6. Good. Now let's get one more set in here. Now we could get one more set in there, but that's really starting to get tight. Okay, so now let's flip this around on our nail. I'm basically rebraiding this, but this end is more feeding me. Here's what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to loosen that up a little bit. Doing exactly the same thing, but notice this end's already braided. Now it's feeding me on this end. And there we are. Now I might have loosened that a little too much. Again, we can come back, flip it around. Now let's tighten this a little bit. The point here is we're just trying to make this as consistent as we can. But the more sets we can get in, the tighter the braid, the better it looks. Now we can keep flipping this as often as we want to get it as consistent as we can. A little bit tighter right here, a little bit more loose there. All we have to do is let's go a little bit tighter up here. Yeah, there we are. That's a little more consistent. Now our last step, let's take this and run that over the edge of our table. That's going to set it, it's going to stretch it. But actually, that looks pretty good. Okay, so we have a feel for what we're doing here. I'm going to braid both of these the same way. And there we go. Okay, I might could get one more set in there, but it looks pretty good. Let's flip it around, try to make it a little bit more consistent. And there we go, relatively consistent. But one good point, flip this as many times as you need to get it consistent, because we won't ever remember that. What we'll notice is how good this looks, all right? So across the edge of our table. Yeah, there we are. That looks good. And one good point, the more sets we can squeeze in, the tighter the braid, the better it looks. I'm going to do the same thing to the other piece. And there we go. That one looks good too. All right, let's step over to our punch table. We're going to do a couple oblongs, round ends, then we're ready to knock these together. On my way over to our punch table, I measured these. They were 28 inches. Now they're 27.5. We didn't lose a lot of distance there. All right, so on our buckle side, let's start master tool, 3/4 inch English punch. Let's punch both ends. Good. All right, let's flip these around, because on the other end, let's go with a round end punch, 3/4 inch. Yeah, that looks good. The tool, all the difference in the world. Now, over to our billets. Let's go with a round end, both ends. But on this end, not necessary, but always a nice touch. We've got those, okay. So on our measurement here, we've got a 1 inch spread, 2 inch spread. Let's go with our oblong. And again, rule and leather here, 3/4 inch strap, 3/4 inch oblong. Both of those could have been punched a little better, okay. Over to our strapping, we're going to do a round end on both ends. Very nice. Okay, let's start knocking this together. Let's start with our keeper and our buckle side. So everything here is going to be 2 4-5s back to back. Let's go with a small double cap rivet, technically the 1/4 inch. So let's come through on our keeper from our flesh side with our post. A little bit hard to see on these smaller pieces. Going to bring that around. Good. Now, one of the things I love about a double cap rivet, so we can snap that cap down without actually setting it. That's a big help. And right here, a perfect example. Now we could set that right there, but that's going to put a ding on the outside of our keeper. Not the intended use for one of our tools here, but for our smaller loops, smaller keepers, that's actually going to be a big help to us. And now this is our setter from our small rivet pack. Smaller setter because we're going to be using bezels, but let's set this. Good. Going to do the same thing on the other. Good. Our keepers are set. Okay. Let's step over to a flattened buckle. We've got these in multiple sizes, multiple finishes. This is a heel bar, so we're going to need a keeper. So on our billet, let's load our buckle. Good, we've got that. And the one thing I always forget to do, let's make sure we add our keeper to that. Now, let's set this. And now, to get a good clean set, let's bring this to the edge of our marble. That way that loop can hang off. Now I get a good flat set. Same on the other. And those look good. Very nice. Okay, over to our main straps. Now there's no top or bottom, left or right. So we can go with our buckle or our tongue on either end. So down here, we're going to use what's called a bezel. These are very cool. Basically, a decorative collar for our rivet. But another nice use for these, say we want to bump up to a medium double cap, larger post, larger cap. Well, that's actually going to take up a little space. That's a big help as well. And for us costumers, we've got a Celtic knot decoration as well. So when we load this, does not matter. We can go above or below, personal preference. I tend to like above, just a little bit better. So let's come through our braided piece, through our billet, drop in our bezel, and a cap. Yeah, that looks good. So I'm going to flip this around. Now let's go with our tongue side. Yeah, there we go. Can't wait to see these on the boots. Same thing on this one. Yeah, good. All right, I'm going to put these on a pair of boots. Let's see how they look. I could have cleaned my boots up just a little bit. They're a little rough. We're leather workers. We can do this. But anyway, so on our bootstrap, to load this, this is my right foot outside. I'm going to take the buckle. I'm going to come across the front. Now let's circle around because now, yeah, there we go. Our tongue is pointed backwards. Actually looks like a good fit already. So we're aiming for the second hole on this. Actually, that's almost a perfect fit. Looks good. And there we are. I like the look of those. On the inside, no hardware to bang together. All of our hardware's on the outside, and it looks good. It's already starting to droop. I could come up to that first hole, but I think I like those right where they are. Another typical Leathercraft project. Nothing difficult here, but they look good, and we can wear and love these for years to come. So many ways to make these our own. Western, biker, fashion, so many ways to go with our bootstraps. But I hope you have a great time designing, making your bootstraps. I bet they're going to be gorgeous. Good luck with your projects.